We're going to continue on in this series called I Am. And we said that Jesus made 7 I Am statements throughout the Gospel of John. And we've looked at a couple of them already, and we're going to look at another one today, and we're going to finish up next week in this series. And the one we're going to look at today, you're going to hear it, and you're going to be like, hey, Craig, it's not Easter, right? Today is not Easter Sunday. Are you confused? I am sometimes, a lot of times, but not today. And I kind of look at it this way. I believe that every Sunday is Resurrection Sunday, to be honest with you. I believe that every day is Resurrection Day, where we get that fresh start and we can start all over and we can do things better. So I'm not confused in what we're going to talk about today, but the statement we're going to look at is the statement that Jesus makes in John chapter 11, where he says, I am the resurrection and the life. And this is just another way that Jesus describes himself to give us the opportunity to get to know him as well as we can. And I want you to know this statement today, this is a game changer, all right? This statement about him being the resurrection and life, this changes everything. Because I'm not downplaying the other statements we've looked at, but if you get this one wrong, if you're not buying into this one, if you're not sold on this one, then we've got some problems, okay? We've got some issues when it comes to eternity. And I want you to understand this in order to not only think about the resurrection at Easter time, but every single day. So before we really get into this, I want to make sure we're all on the same page because I don't want to assume anything. What exactly is a resurrection? How would you define a resurrection? As simple as possible, I would explain it to you this way. A resurrection is when something that is dead comes back to life. Something that was once dead, officially dead, comes back to life. And so this statement made by Jesus in John chapter 11 is one of the most powerful, one of the most hope-filled statements in all of Scripture that Jesus makes. Because without the resurrection, there is no hope. Without the resurrection, there is no hope of things that are dead being brought back to life. Without the resurrection, we are going to remain dead in our sins with no chance of ever being brought back to life and experience life in heaven with him. This is how important this is. Now, just like the other parts of the series, we've talked about I am the good shepherd, and we talked about I am the light of the world, where I think the majority of us that have been in church for any length of time, we're familiar with those statements. We're like, yeah, I've heard that before, or yeah, I know about that, but we're not as familiar with the context in which those statements are made. And I believe that when you understand the context into which Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, and you understand the context that goes with, I am the light of the world, and you understand the context of him saying, I am the resurrection and the life, I think that makes those statements even more impactful and even more helpful in our lives. So the statement we're going to look at today was made in a much broader story about another guy who had died but didn't stay dead. And his name was Lazarus. John chapter 11 and verse 25. Just let me go ahead and read the statement first, and then we'll get into the rest of the story. John chapter 11 verse 25. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. Here's what I want to do with this story in John chapter 11. I want to break this story down just so that we understand some more about this story. And then I want to look at 3 different ways that many people die on the inside and need to experience a resurrection. I'm not necessarily talking physically, but I'm talking spiritually, I'm talking emotionally, maybe even relationally. And they die in a couple different ways, and they need to be brought back to life. So let's begin back at the beginning of chapter 11 in verse 1. Now, a certain man was ill, and you need to know this actually means going to die. He doesn't just have the flu or a cold. Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. Now, this really is the story of life. Right? I didn't say the circle of life, you Lion King fans, all right? But it's the story of life, to where life always consists of the good, the bad, and the ugly. You don't separate that, right? We don't go too long with just experiencing the good. And thank God we don't go, too long, even though it's longer than a lot of us want to, of experiencing the ugly. But that's life. And chances are there are some of you who are here today, and there are people who come every single week that right now you find your life at a really good season, right? Things are going well. And I want you to know we don't hate you, okay? We rejoice with you that things are going well. I mean, people are getting along with each other, and there's good health that's taking place, and the bills are being paid, right? I mean, life is just really good right now, and I want you to know there is nothing to be ashamed of if you're in that season of life. But you also need to realize that sooner than later, you might enter into a different season of life. The other season of life that maybe many of you are at right now at this exact moment, where things are not going very well, and relationships are very icy right now, and there are some health struggles, and there's some financial struggles, and you're struggling with a pull hook on the golf course. Frustrating, okay? A lot more serious things than that. But life is just not very good. One of the most difficult things that I find in ministry is going and talking to people, talking to families who are really having a rough time. And a lot of them mainly like health-wise, right? When you go visit a family that a loved one is really, really sick or maybe even about to die, I've always thought this in my ministry: what do I say? What can I say to somebody like that? And that's where we are in this story right here. Hey, Jesus, the one you love is ill. The one you love is about to die. Now, Jesus was always looking for ways to make the biggest impact. He was always looking for ways to cause people to think, wow, I've never really thought of that before. Look at how he responds to the news in verse 4. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. This thing, this last thing that anybody would ever want to happen, this thing that everybody tries to avoid in death, is going to bring glory to God and have others glorify the Son of God. Okay, thanks, Jesus. I feel better. I think. I really don't know what to think. I don't know what to feel right now. Now, we're going to come back to verse 4, but I just want to summarize verses 5 through 14 for you real quick. And I encourage you to read them later, or you can go ahead and read them now and just ignore everything that I'm saying like a lot of people do anyway. So it's all good, okay? But however you want to get this information is totally up to you. But one would think that as soon as Jesus got this information, you know why? Because he had a great relationship with Mary and Martha. He loved Lazarus. So one would think that as soon as Jesus got the news that Lazarus was about to die, that Jesus would drop everything and go to Lazarus, right? Most people would think that's what would happen in the story. But when you read the story, what happens? Nothing. No, really, that's the answer. Nothing happens. For 2 days, he doesn't do anything. He's just like, I don't think he whistled. The Bible doesn't say he whistled. I just kind of added that emphasis, all right? But he doesn't do anything. Nothing changes. He stays right where he is. Mary and Martha are freaking out because Lazarus is about to die, and Jesus just chills for 2 more days doing what he was doing. He did not respond how they thought he was going to respond. I don't know why he didn't go. I don't know why he didn't just pack up and leave. I don't know if he was involved in something else at the moment. I don't know if he said, well, you know what? My reservation at this place is through Wednesday, so I can't leave now because that's just not good stewardship. I don't know. I don't know why he didn't leave, but for 2 days, nothing happens. And so he finally says, okay, guys, he's talking to his disciples. He says, okay, guys, it's time for us to go. We're going to go, and we're going to go back through Judea. And they were like, are you crazy? Because if we go back through Judea, you know what's going to happen? There's a real good chance they're going to try and kill you, which was a true statement. And so he wants to go back through Judea, and he's like, guys, we have to. My buddy, my friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. And I want you to know, he was not implying that he was like taking a nappy nap that I hope to God we get to experience this afternoon. That's not what he's talking about here. He literally knows that he needs to go back because Lazarus is dead and he needs to bring him back to life. Now here's what we want to do. We're going to focus on 3 different individuals from the story. We're going to look at, we're going to look at one of the disciples, Thomas. We're going to look at the sisters. We're going to look at Mary, and we're going to look at Martha. And we're going to see here that each and every one of them is dying in a different way on the inside. And if we pay close enough attention, chances are we're going to be able to relate to one of them, if not more than one of them, about at times in our life where we seem to be dying on the inside in the same way as these people in our story. So let's start with Thomas. Maybe you are like Thomas and you are dead in your doubts. What was the unfair nickname that Thomas got stuck with? Doubting Thomas. I really, and that's a message for another day. I really do think that was unfair because he just asked the questions that everybody else was thinking is really all that took place in his life. Doubting Thomas. Look at verse 16 of John chapter 11. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. Now, a lot of the other Bible versions use the Greek name Didymus, okay? Didymus, everybody say Didymus. It sounds like a bad rapper name, right? Like, yo, Didymus, kick it one time for me, boy, right? So got some Vanilla Ice fans in the house? All right, I'm feeling you. I thought I was going to be all by myself, all right? Now, I want you to know here, Thomas isn't being sincere. Thomas doesn't want to die with Jesus right here. He's actually being sarcastic. So to hashtag doubter, add hashtag sarcastic, because this is what Thomas is saying here. Well, hey, why don't we go with him so we can die too? That'll be fun, And this is the mindset that he has right now. In other words, guys, I doubt this is a really good idea. I doubt that anything good is going to come out of this. So I don't think it's a good idea that we go with Jesus through Judea. And I'm sure we've all had spiritual doubts before. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you've ever doubted spiritually before, because some of you would be really, really honest with me, but there would be some of you that would just sit there and polish your halo. So I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask the question because I know the answer already. We've all at one time or another, we've struggled with spiritual doubts. I don't care if you're newly saved. I don't care if you've only been saved a year. I don't care if you've been saved 10 years. Life's circumstances, if we're not careful and we let down our guard and we're not thinking how we're supposed to, it's real easy for spiritual doubts to enter into our life. And when we allow that to happen, we begin to die on the inside. And we need to be resurrected. And this is what's taking place here. Every single one of us at one time or another, we prayed some prayer that God could and would do for us what we want him to do for us. And the very second God didn't answer our prayer how we thought he should have answered our prayer, immediately doubts enter into our mind. God, why would you do that? Is this not what I need? I think this is what I need in my life right now. Maybe for some of you, you rode the faith coattails of mom or dad or grandma for so many years. And you got into college, and some professor told you that all those things you believe, they're just silly. They're not all true, and it got you thinking, I wonder if he's right. And you began to doubt. We have spiritual doubts. Maybe you thought your faith was strong enough to take a stand, to stand for what was right. And then all of a sudden, something really bad happened to somebody you love, that you didn't agree with God's plan. And bam, the doubts flood in. Does God really have my best interests in mind? Does God really care about me? Does God really love me? We've all been there. And if we aren't careful, if we're not paying attention, if we don't do something about it, we begin to die on the inside, and we need to be resurrected. So maybe you're here today and maybe you're dead in your doubts. Maybe some of you, you're not like Thomas. You don't struggle with that, but maybe you're more like Mary. The second thing, you're dead in your discouragement. You're dead in your discouragement. Maybe this is your mindset, and you don't have to agree with this. You don't have to raise your hand, but your mindset is, you know what? Nothing good ever happens to me. Right? Your MO is, I can't ever catch a break. Things are always bad. Nothing ever gets better. And you're so discouraged right now. So maybe you're not a big doubter, but chances are you're pretty good at being discouraged. You're pretty good at dealing with discouragement all the time. And I want you to know, in our story, Mary was very discouraged. She was discouraged. Look at verse 20. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him. But Mary remained seated in the house. Now, I like these. I like to try to have these stories come to life a little bit, right? And I can see Mary right now, just kind of sitting there, and they get word, and she's like, I ain't going. I'm not going. It's been 2 days. He's dead already. Why should I go now? I'm just going to be even more discouraged than I already am. So I'm not going. I'm not even going to give him the benefit because he should have been here before. Now we read that and we think and even say, Mary, it's Jesus, right? I mean, come on. It's Jesus here. Jesus can do whatever he wants to do, but how many of us are at that same exact place right now? Dealing with discouragement. I can't change anything. I can't do it. Well, you're right. You can't, but I know somebody who can. And in your mind, you have this mindset. Nothing is ever going to be different in my life. Nothing is ever going to be better in my life. I'm always going to struggle with this. I'm always going to be involved in these things. I'm always going to give in to this temptation. I'm always going to struggle with this addiction. And that's your mindset right now. I can't, I won't. And you are dead in your discouragement right now. I read a story that a former pastor told, and former being the key word. And he said, ministry and being a pastor is filled with tough times, filled with times of discouragement that most people don't know about, and that's a true statement. He then said this, the most I've ever been discouraged was when the church voted to move my day off to Sunday. Let it kind of marinate a little bit for some of you, all right? Don't worry, okay? I will look for somewhere else to minister before that happens. Now, just so you know, I want you to know, I want you to be on the same page. I want you to understand what everybody else is dealing with. Because even though in your mind you probably think, oh, you know, I'm probably not the only person. How many times do you go through life thinking that you're the only one struggling with what you're struggling with? You're the only one going there. So just so you know, okay? Now, I want you to be honest, all right? All right, we are in church. This is a Sunday morning. I want you to be honest all the time, but especially now. I want you to raise your hand. Everybody participate, even you, Chief No Fun, all right? I want everybody to raise their hand if you've ever been discouraged in your entire life. And now hold them up. Now, can you look around? All right, some of you, you're not going to be able to see too many other people, all right? Now you see, so now I just proved to you that you're not alone. And if somebody wasn't raising their hand, that they're liars and we need to pray for them, all right? That's what we just established right now. But the key point is understanding that you are not alone. This is not a battle that you are fighting that nobody else is fighting. That if we aren't careful, and if we don't protect our heart, and if we don't do the things we know God has proved himself faithful in doing, and believe in those things and live in those things, it's so easy to slip into discouragement, to be dead in our discouragement. So some of you might be here today and you're dead in your doubts. Others, you might be here today and you're dead in your discouragement. Either way, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're in God's house. So maybe you don't relate to Thomas, or better known as DJ Didymus, all right? Maybe you don't relate to Mary. Maybe you relate to Martha in our story, and you are dead in the delay. You're dead in the delay. Because in her mind, Jesus took too long. He should have come sooner. He could have come sooner. All of this could have been avoided. But for some reason he didn't. Jesus, why did you take so long? I mean, Jesus, you're omnipotent. You're all powerful. Jesus, you are omnipresent. You can be everywhere at the same time. So what gives? Why did you take so long? Maybe not in those words, but have you ever wondered before why God didn't answer your very sincere prayer the first time, or the second time, or the 100th time you prayed that sincere prayer? God, what gives? Why? Why are you not helping me right now? Look at verse 17. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been dead in the tomb for how long? 4 days. Now, is there any significance to the number 4? Why, yes, there is. Thank you so much for asking. Let me explain. In Martha's day, they believed that when someone died, that their spirit would kind of hang around for up to 3 days. Up to 3 days, the spirit would just kind of be chilling just in case somebody came back to life and the spirit could get back there and not be distracted and not be interfered with. Now, I want you to know this is not a Christian belief. This is not a biblical belief. This was kind of treated as folklore at this time. That up to 3 days, there's a chance that the spirit and the flesh could be reunited again and someone could come back to life. But at day 4, bye-bye, not a chance. You're done, gone. There's no chance of that happening anymore. So in Martha's mind, Lazarus wasn't just mostly dead, okay, you Princess Bride fans. He was dead. He was all the way dead. He was dead and gone. He was so dead that when Martha tried to describe the smell of his body, she said, he stinketh, according to the King James Version, all right? Now that's a holy stink, all right? If you stinketh. And this is how she describes him at this time. 4 days, spirit's gone, all the way dead, and he stinketh. Might have added a little bit of emphasis on my own there, all right? Verse 21. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Can you believe talking to Jesus like that? Can you imagine the nerve of her? Hey, Lord, it's your fault. I don't know if she like hid and ducked and ran after she said it or what, but she's saying, hey, it's your fault that he's dead. You took too long. Because if you would have come right away when we first sent message to you, chances are there's a really good chance he would still be alive. But you didn't. And she was a little upset at the moment. She was dead in her delay. Now, some of you can relate because you are still to this day waiting for some answered prayer. You are still praying a prayer that you've prayed over and over and over again that you've not gotten the answer to yet. And I don't know what your situation is. Some of you single ladies, all right, and I'm not going to start singing Beyonce right now, all right? I'm fighting the urge. Some of you single ladies are like, hey, you know what? All my friends, they're out doing God knows what, and they're at the club with DJ Didymus, and, they're just living in sin, and they just total disregard for their bodies, and yet they seem to find that perfect someone that they're going to spend the rest of their life with, and I'm over here trying to be holy, serving Jesus, and I've got nobody. Nobody's knocking on my door. Nobody's interested in me, and that's a struggle that you're experiencing right now, and you may be dead in the delay because of your frustration. Some of you married couples, you've been praying for a baby. You want to be pregnant so bad and you want a baby, and you look around and you look at some other families and you look at some other parents that have no earthly right to be a parent, right? They can't even keep a goldfish alive, and yet God blesses them with a kid. If that was the case, we would not have any kids right now, right? But you're like, man, why do they get to be a parent where, I feel bad for the kid because of the parent? And we all know people like that. And you are so frustrated and you are dead in the delay. And you're dying on the inside. You're praying for answers to questions you have and nothing yet. You're trying to improve your financial situation, and you've been trying to improve your financial situation since as long as you've had finances. And it seems like a constant struggle for you. You're still trying to find out or figure out new and improved ways to make chicken for dinner. When we were in college, there was a young married couple, and they're like, hey, when you guys get married, and especially when you're in college, you're going to have to be very creative and find a lot of different ways to make chicken. Well, let me tell you something. Steph and I just celebrated 22 years of marriage 2 days ago, this past Friday. And Savannah, our youngest, just said last week, why do we eat chicken so much? So it's not just a newly married thing, but it is an ongoing thing. Why? Because chicken is cheap. And you got to find different ways to make chicken. And you're struggling in your finances. I want to encourage you today. I want to encourage all of you today with this. Write this down if you're taking notes today. God's delays are not God's denials. God's delays are not God's denials. Just because God hasn't done something yet doesn't mean that he never will. Just because he hasn't done something yet doesn't mean he's forgotten about you. It doesn't mean that he stopped loving you, because I've experienced in my life that a lot of times God's delays are for my protection. They're to help me. They're to save me. They're to allow me to experience something better down the road. But it's so easy to get discouraged with that. So far in our story, Lazarus dies. Thomas doubts some more. Mary's depressed and discouraged. Martha's ticked off at Jesus and blames him. And all of this happens prior to verse 22, right? And then you get to verse 22, and everything changes. Almost like in mid-thought for Martha. Look at verse 22. Or let's read verse 21 again just to get the idea. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Verse 22. But even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. She just gets done blaming Jesus, right? And throwing a tantrum, and follows that with, but even now I know. What is she saying? She's saying that even though we are dead in our doubts, even though we are dead in the delay, even though we're dead in the discouragement, even though nothing makes sense right now, even now, I know in my heart that God can do whatever God wants to do. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that? Do you really live that way? That in the middle of the most frustrating things in our lives that we're experiencing, even now, I know God can help me. I know God will give me what I need. I've been praying for months, maybe years, but even now, God will still do what only God can do. Somebody say even now. Oh, come on, y'all can do better than that, all right? We're almost done, all right? Just make me happy one time. Can you say even now? Even now. See, here's the thing. If you can't say it, chances are you're not going to believe it. If you can't proclaim it, chances are you're not going to buy into it. And you're not going to truly believe that he can, that even in the midst of the junk that's taking place. Because some of our lives are still stuck in verses 16 through 21. That's where you are right now. And guess what? We go there. I understand that. But the Word of God is encouraging us today that, you know what? You don't have to stay in verse 21, that you can get to verse 22. And even in the middle of all of the crap taking place in your life, that you can say, even now, I know that God has my best interests in mind. That God's going to take care of me. That God's going to provide for me. That God is going to resurrect me from my doubts, from my discouragement, from even the delay that I'm believing in. Look at verse 23. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, listen to me. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Now, verse 25 was the statement. I am the resurrection and the life. Did you see that there? He doesn't say, I have the ability to resurrect, even though he did. That's not what he says. He says, I am the resurrection. I am the life. Because it's not just what Jesus does. It's never just been about what Jesus can do. It's always been about what he can do, but also who he is. And he's saying, I am the resurrection. He's saying, I am who you need. I am what you're looking for. It's me. It's found in me. Those of you that are dead in whatever, you need me. Because I am the resurrection. Write down this one final thought, if you would please, there in your notes, and it's an important one. The resurrection is not an event. The resurrection is a person. It's not just an event. It's a person. Because check this out. Dead things don't stay dead when Jesus walks in the room. Dead things don't stay dead when the resurrection shows up. So that tells me that if I've walked in here dead, and if I walk out of here dead, then that's on me. Because I've had the opportunity to meet with Jesus, I've had the opportunity to meet with the resurrection, and I don't have to walk out of here the same way I walked in. I don't have to be dead. Why? Because I am clinging to the resurrection and the life. When he approached the tomb where Lazarus stinketh, this is what happens. Verse 43. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice. Why? Because dead people don't hear well, okay? He said, Lazarus, come out. And the man who had died, didn't say he's not sleeping, not taking a nap. The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to him, unbind him and let him go. Church, those of you who are here today and you're dead in your doubts, those of you who are dead in your discouragement, those of you who are dead in your delay, I want you to know that Jesus Christ has rolled the stone away, and he is saying to you with a loud voice, come out. You don't have to stay in there. You don't have to continue to do what you're doing. You don't have to continue to give in to that. You don't have to continue to live that way anymore. You don't have to be captivated by sin anymore. You don't have to give in to that temptation anymore. You don't have to give in to that addiction anymore. You can come out. Why? Because I am the resurrection and the life. I am who you need. I am the only one who can do for you what you need done for you. Would you pray with me? God, we thank you for the opportunity that you've given each and every one of us to be in your house today. And God, I know that church was easy for some people to get to today, but for others, not so much. And God, I'm glad they're here. God, I'm well aware that there are many people that come to church and they may have a smile on the outside, but inside they're battling with so much. And I know that to be true because it's been true in my life before. So God, I pray today, as I pray every Sunday and every day, that we would be completely transparent, that we would be completely honest as to what is taking place in our life and what we need most in our life. God, I pray that if anybody hears anything today before they leave here today, it's you saying to them, come out. Life doesn't have to continue to be the way that it is for you right now. Come out. God, we thank you for the fact that you decided to be our good shepherd. And you decided to be the light of the world. And God, I pray that even now that we would rejoice in the fact that you have chosen to make your Son Jesus Christ the resurrection that we need to be the people that you want us to be. So God, I pray that we would make up our minds that we're not going to play games anymore. We're not going to mess around anymore. We're not going to ignore anymore. We're not going to make excuses anymore. But we are going to do what needs to be done to be the people that you want us to be the church that you want us to be. God, I pray for marriages. I pray for friendships. I pray for families. I pray that you would have your perfect will and way with everyone. And God, I would be remiss if I did not pray for those who still need to trust you as their personal Lord and Savior. So God, I pray that today that person could be completely honest and accept the fact that you have come to be the resurrection for them and they need you. And God, I pray that you would make that a reality today.